Are you thinking about moving to the Houston area and don't quite know where to start? My name is Aaron. I'm a realtor in the greater Houston area, and I'm going to give a breakdown and a true, honest, brutally honest opinion of the pros and cons of living in the Houston area. So if you're interested in learning about that, check out this video. Also, every week I'm helping new people move to and move throughout the Houston area. And if you have any questions at all, or if you want to match up your lifestyle with where you want to live, feel free to shoot me a text, call, DM, find me on Instagram, find me on Facebook, anything that's more convenient for you. If you need some help with finding a home or relocating to the Houston area, I'd love to help. I got you covered. So I want to jump right into the cons of living in the Houston area. And don't get me wrong, I really love the city. City's been great to us for a few years now. We've been here for going on probably like 6 or 7 years now, and I really love the city. But there's some things that you absolutely have to know about before you live here. You can't just move here willy-nilly and just assume that it's gonna be perfect. There's some things you gotta deal with, right? So the first thing is traffic. That is the absolute first con. Traffic is awful. And I'm coming from San Antonio. That was my stop after I moved from my hometown in Baton Rouge. I went to San Antonio for construction. I was out there for 5 or 6 years before I moved out here to Houston. And traffic was bad out there, but when we bought our townhome in the San Antonio area, it was about 15 miles or so from where my job was going to be located. And, that took us about 20 to 35 minutes. And, on a bad day, it might be 45 minutes. When we moved to Houston, we ended up actually renting an apartment in the Energy Corridor, which is on the west side of Houston. And it was about the same distance to where my job site was going to be when I actually moved here for construction. So I thought I would be in the money to be like, all right, I'll get up 20, 30 minutes early, just to make sure that I'm on time or early. And I thought it would be the same thing. And no, it took me an hour to get to work. And I don't know if you've ever seen the meme that Houston is an hour away from Houston, but is really one of the truest things that you can ever say. Houston can be an hour away from Houston, and that's crazy to say, but traffic is really bad. So depending on what your lifestyle is, where you're working, I would definitely think about kind of where you're going to plant roots based on the lifestyle that you want to live. Con number 2 is that zoning is super loosey-goosey out here. And so what does that mean? In most places, you can't really have residential homes right on side of like a grocery store or a Walmart or something like that, right? So it's not uncommon out here, and even in where we live, we bought in a part of town that's kind of revitalizing on the north side of Houston. And even from my home, I can walk to like 5 car washes, like 6 sketchy auto dealers. I can walk to a pawn shop. I can walk to a liquor store. And then if I walk the other direction, I can walk to $1 million neighborhood. So zoning is very weird depending on where you are and if you go to like a very deed restricted kind of area. But in many of the most desirable areas in the Houston area, I'm talking like your east downtowns, your midtowns, your, Montrose, any of those kind of buzzwordy kind of places in the center of the city, even though they have a high price point, zoning is super weird. And you can walk outside of a $500,000 to $700,000 house and see a liquor store or see an old 7-Eleven. It's just really one of those weird things that if you're coming from somewhere that's not like that, it's weird to see. I know where we lived in San Antonio, there was a much more defined, this is neighborhood, this is commercial, this is industrial. Like it was a very much more defined thing. Houston is just unfortunately not like that, depending on kind of where you're trying to be. The third thing, and I hope that this doesn't come off wrong, but it kind of goes hand in hand with the loose zoning, is that in Houston, no matter like how much wealth you think is here, and there's a lot of abundant opportunity here, but this is one of the places that has been the most highlighted to me, that there is a lack of effort to do something with homelessness in the area. And so kind of going along with point number 2, you can be somewhere super amazing, somewhere that's supposed to be a great neighborhood. You feel comfortable, you're spending a lot for a house, and you could literally go outside your home and see tents like on the corner. And I don't think it's to the level of an LA kind of like tent city sort of vibe. I've never been to LA, but just seeing what I see on TV. But I don't think it's to that level, but it is a culture shock. When we first moved here from San Antonio, I had never seen anything like that in San Antonio. And you had like, people that were down on their luck, they're needing for money, they're begging for money or whatnot, whatever the situation is. Everybody kind of goes through things, right? No judgment on that. But it wasn't as widespread as it was when we moved to Houston. And even when we were on the outskirts, there would still be, I would say, like an elevated amount of people that were just down on their luck out here. And it's just so weird to see so many fortunate and blessed people out here to also be right up against that. And so probably the biggest change was when we actually moved from the energy corridor area and we moved into the city, Midtown. We're paying a whole bunch of money for a luxury 1-bedroom apartment downstairs, and I started to pick up the hobby of running. And one of the craziest things that I just never thought that I would run across, as I'm running downtown, and I'm just like, oh, I'm in this safe and areas downtown and all this stuff, and I literally, I'm running down the streets and you just see people that have just posted up under the interstate, and that's their home, right? So it's just it's often weird when you have somebody that's relocating from a different place where it's kind of not like that. Kind of like I did when I grew up, it just wasn't like that. And you would expect, or you would maybe even think that I'm paying so much money, I shouldn't see that sort of thing. But depending on where you live, that may or may not be the case, right? So definitely something to think about as you're moving to the area. The fourth thing that I would say you got to think about is, because it is such, and that's a con, is because it's such a huge city that's growing, construction is constant. And that's road construction, that is building, right? That's new commercial spaces, that's new residential spaces. Like you're constantly in construction, just because there's so many people that are relocating here, and Houston is one of the fastest growing cities over the last like decade or so. So there's going to always kind of be this feel where you're driving through or around a construction zone, and it's just something that, if you're not used to that sort of vibe, it's something that you're going to have to get used to and kind of get over the fact that you're kind of always driving through a construction zone, right? So definitely something that you want to think about. Con number 5, and this is something that's crazy to me because, like I said, I'm from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Hurricane days back in those days was literally a free day off from school, and you're probably going to have like what we used to do is like a hurricane party. I can't tell you the amount of hurricane parties that I've gone to in my younger years back in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. But here in Houston, if there is a hurricane, flash flood, or any of those kind of warnings, go home and make sure that you're safe, because flooding is real here, and there's almost no safe haven, right? Now, Harvey was a little bit of a big deal, right? Harvey was a different beast. That was an amount of rain that, this city has never seen in that a short amount of time for so long, that's almost, that's doomsday kind of weather, right? You're not expecting that. But on standard, like heavy day rains, it's not uncommon to have many places in Houston that are super flooded, right? And it's one of those things where you don't know until you know. And even though something maybe wasn't a flood area before, it might be now, just due to the things that construction has done. Maybe there was a wetland or something, or a green space that was taking up some of that, that's now a new construction home, and it's basically just become this bowl around your area, and you just don't know until you know. So definitely some of the biggest cons of living in Houston, and one of those things is floods for sure. Like I said, I lived in Baton Rouge my whole life up until when I moved to San Antonio for work, and I never was flooded in. I can't think of any time where a hurricane came or heavy rain came and we were literally flooded in our home. And I moved here 5 or 6 years ago, and there's been at least 5 or 6 events at this point where it's so flooded that I couldn't go to work, or it's so flooded that I couldn't do something or leave my apartment complex or whatever the case may be. But flooding has been a huge deal, and it's something that you really want to think about before you move to the Houston area. But enough of the doomsday, enough of the doom and gloom. Let's get to some of the positive things that Houston has to offer. And one of my favorite things about Houston is that it's so diverse, right? I was coming from Baton Rouge, Louisiana when I was born and raised out there, and it wasn't that much diversity out there. When I moved to San Antonio, it was a little bit better, but still it really didn't have all the cultures and all the flavors that you see here in the Houston area, especially when you're in the Houston proper. And you can kind of see that with so much diversity of food and cultures and things that come here. And it's really heightened with all of the events that come here. Like you can have a country festival and then followed up by some circus thing that comes here, then followed up by some rap thing that comes here, then have like a super big art festival that comes here, and it just touches on different flavors and cultures. And I just think that's such a cool thing to be in a city that has that and embraces so much of that. You know, if you want a certain type of food, you can find that here. If you want to be around a certain group of enthusiasts, you can find that here. There's just so much diversity and a sense of inclusion, because there's so many opportunities and things that are offered to you. That's one of my favorite things about being in the Houston area. The second thing that is a pro about being in the Houston area is that it's so close to so many things. So if you want to go to Baton Rouge, like we often do, just because my family's out there, you're 4 or 5 hour drive, super close. You don't have to pay for a plane ticket if you don't want to. Just get on the road after work, and you can get home within 4 or 5 hours. If you want to head on over to Austin, if you want to keep it weird, right? You go up to Austin, you're a couple hours from Austin. If you want to head on out west to San Antonio, where we used to live, 3 or so hours from there. If you want to head up to Dallas, you kind of get the drift, right? If you want to get that coastal life, you want to hit Galveston, you're just so close to so many things that it's like a great centralized location in the South, right? So there's always places you can go just because you're so centrally located. We also have a huge airport here, the Bush International, and that can get you basically non-stop flights to pretty much anywhere in the country, just because it is an international airport. So it definitely is one of those things where it's just such a good location for travel and things that you want to do on a vacation wise. The third thing that I think is super awesome here is jobs are super good here, right? Especially if you're in the tech, energy, or medical field. We have the world's or the nation's like largest medical field, right? So if you're in any of those big systems, Memorial, Herman Memorial, you're in those, City of Houston, Harris County, you're in the Methodist, you're in any of those like big systems, they have tons of opportunity for you here throughout the city of Houston, as well as in all of the suburbs. So especially if you're in the medical field, you have so much opportunity here that it is crazy. And then if you go down south, or if you go out east, there's so much like opportunity in the energy sector, whether you're oil and gas or kind of whatever your vibe is, but there's definitely a lot of opportunity. And then there's because the cost of living is so great here, it's also a great place for the for the entrepreneur to kind of set up roots and kind of start from the ground up here, just because apartment living here is fairly affordable. And so there's just a great opportunity for someone that has a business here, wants to start a business here, or is in an established industry to just kind of move here and kind of make things their own. And that's just one of the things that I just really love about being in Houston. The fourth thing that I would say is a really good positive about being in Houston is that it's very big. So I know I kind of talked about traffic being terrible, but Houston is really big. And there's so many like suburbs and lifestyles that you can live, and places that you can be, depending on your budget, that meet almost any lifestyle. So if you want to be near a wooded area, there's a lifestyle for that. If you want to be, and it's the Woodlands, coincidentally enough, if you want to be out in acreage and you want to not necessarily see your neighbors so much, there are some places in Townball that can do for that. Or you can go down south and you can be in some of these places like Rasharon or Manville. Or if you want to go out southwest and you want to be in Richmond or Rosenberg, some of these places, there's a thing for that. If you want to be in the mix of everything, you don't want to miss a festival, you don't want to miss a party that happens in the city. There's, Montrose, there's downtown, there's midtown, there's east downtown. There's so many places that fit that. If you want to be near shopping and you want to be near these little bistros and all that stuff, you can go in the uptown area. There's just a thing that you can do for whatever the lifestyle is that you're trying to live. There's a place for you here in the Houston area. As also, like I said earlier, even if you're not ready to buy, apartments are fairly affordable, and there's hundreds of them that can be considered luxury homes, so you don't have to go and live in squalor or anything like that, right? There's tons of options for you. You just may have to adjust on your location depending on what you're trying to spend and a lifestyle that you're trying to live. And the last thing that I would say is a super big positive and a pro for living in Houston is that it's a super affordable big city. So one of the things that I thought was crazy when my wife and I were actually visiting a friend in New York was that a 2-bedroom apartment costs like $3,000 or $4,000 a month. And it was in a decent part of town, but building was super old. Elevator was kind of cruddy. And it was one of those things where, not my friends, but like the place where we were kind of looking out, they actually live somewhere super nice, but kind of some of the places that we were looking out, they were like $4,000 for like what I would consider like a super ratty kind of like apartment. And for $4,000 here, you're like in a mini mansion somewhere, right? Like you're living a super good life somewhere where your neighborhood is gated. You probably got pools. You probably got 3,000 or 4,000 square feet. Like you're living a life for $3,000 or $4,000 out a month out here compared to, let's say like a New York for rent, right? So it's one of those things. The cost of living here is just crazy, and it's amazing what you can get for your money out here. So if you have any questions at all, if you want to know anything about the ins and outs of living in the Houston area and you want to match your lifestyle up to where you want to live, all of my information is going to be in the description box below. Feel free to shoot me a text, give me a call, shoot me a carrier pigeon, jump on my social media, whatever is the most easiest for you to get in touch with me. Feel free to do that. Also, hit that subscribe button if you're interested in learning more about the Houston area. I'm going to be posting videos every week. This is Aaron Lathan again from United Real Estate of Houston. I look forward to hearing from you, and I hope you have a great day.